All right, ladies and gentlemen, you see it on the screen. It says it, so we are. And we are live. Thank all of you for joining us today. We certainly appreciate it. As you see, it's like, who is that guy? That's not Mitch. There's no mustache there. I'll explain all that here in just a second. But before we get too far, let's go with the walk up music.
Are you ready? 20 seconds start now. Ten seconds remaining.
All right, everybody. Look at those things lighting up. Everybody jumping on board with us. Thank you guys very, very much if you come on board. We apologize. Actually, I should say we. Sirhan has nothing to do with it. It was all me. There was some technical difficulties on the other end here. All that here in a minute. But, like I say, we certainly appreciate all of you jumping on board with us. We are going to do a lot today. It's going to be a little different if you haven't seen the tweet that I had sent out earlier. We're going to do an all Ohio segment. And that's where my buddy Sirhan comes in. We'll explain in just a moment. We're going to do an all Arizona segment. Then we're just going to jump into kind of some leftovers at the end. Like Thanksgiving dinner or the day after. One of those two, right? So with our All Ohio, we're going to look at the Cincinnati Bengals. We're going to look at the Ohio State Buckeyes. I say OH and you say, you know.
I-O.
I-O. We're going to look at the Cincinnati Reds. We're going to do a bunch of stuff with those three categories. When we get to the All Arizona, we're going to look at college basketball with Grand Canyon University. We're going to look at the Arizona Cardinals. We're going to take a dive into the Phoenix Suns. And then, believe it or not, we're also going to do ASU. And then, like I said, we're going to kind of clean some things up at the end. We're even going to ask the question, who is the best conference in college football? We'll get to that. We're going to talk about Craig Popovich. We're going to talk about Nathan Shepard. And we're going to talk about the Brewers and really the dominance before it is all said and done. Mitch will be with us, and then once he is, we'll do our opening drive. All right, everybody. And of course, it wouldn't be a show that had some kind of technical difficulties.
Are you ready?
If it weren't for
20 seconds start
no,
now.
I'm not. Okay, good. I don't need that to play again. Hang on. All right. Sirhan, how you doing, buddy?
Fine. How about yourself there, Mike?
Hey, I'm doing wonderful, man. Let's start with you. Let's start with why you're here, and let's get everybody up to speed. First name is Sirhan. How do you pronounce that last name, sir?
First name is pronounced Sirhan. Last name is pronounced Day.
All right. So obviously, people are going to look at you just like I did. You're a fantastic writer for us, and us being www.welikesportspc.com. You do the Bengals for us. You dabble in the Reds a little bit, and then the other big thing that you do is boxing, and we'll certainly get into that because there was something that happened. We posted an article up about it. It happened 30 years ago to the day today. We'll discuss that here before we move into too much of anything else, Mr. Day. So tell me, you are from Columbus, Ohio. How did you get to, I'm sorry, you're from Cincinnati, Ohio. How did you get to Cincinnati, Ohio, Sirhan?
My parents resided overseas for the longest time. They came into the States in 1977. We lived in a small town just across the river called Newport, Kentucky, where I was born in 78. Of course, from there, as Newport became an area where it wasn't the greatest living conditions, we relocated to a small town called Amelia, Ohio, in Claremont County. Right. We lived there from 1981 to about the end of the 20th century. And then as the Amelia started getting a little crowded, we weren't big on the condensed subdivisions over there, so we bought a whole land out in a small town called Nicholsville, which is between New Richmond and Bethel. We moved out there. This is where we have resided since the turn of the century up to the present day, and so on.
Okay, now, as most people know who are watching the show, maybe they're only watching it for the first time because our buddy Sirhan's got them over here watching the Sportz Truth, and we appreciate that. for those of you who have been with me, it's like, well, wait a minute. He lives in Arizona because he said it before. Him and Mitch both live in Arizona, and that's absolutely correct. But I used to live in a small town called Hillsboro, Ohio, which is not too far from where Sirhan resides right now. We met by doing the whole website thing. And I've just been waiting for the perfect time to bring Sirhan on because, now's this is, if there's a big time, it's right now. The Bengals have a game on Thursday night we can certainly talk about. The Bengals just had a big win on Sunday that we can talk about. Ohio State just beat Penn State. We can certainly talk about that. The Reds are making moves, so I'm like, you know what? If there's a time to bring this guy on, the Sportz Truth, it is this week. I reached out to him. He said, well, I know I'm going to make that place a lot better because I'm certainly a lot better looking than you are. So let's brighten that Sportz Truth up a little bit and let's come on the show, right? So here we
Right.
are. We got Mike Valentine. You got Sirhan on there. And, of course, Sirhan, where can they get you at on Twitter, sir?
My handle is Sirhan on X on the Twitter platform. I can also be found on various others. And my YouTube channel, it's just my name, Sirhan Day. Also on IG, Sirhan Day 45. And I just recently launched a Twitch channel called Sirhan on Twitch because where I started to stream my once like every other day streaming Sirhan on X, which streams on multiple platforms. You can find me on various of those. And as Mike mentioned, we talked about the blogs I do for your site. I also have an occasional show on a cross Atlantic show with some connections overseas once every 2 weeks on a Thursday called the Boxing Media Hub Hour, where a fellow from England and myself just spend an hour talk about a whole lot of boxing related topics.
Fantastic. Now, as we get moving, we're going to jump into the boxing thing right away. Since Sirhan brought that up, I'd love to talk about that. We have an article up on www.welikesportspc.com, which is what he just wrote on this particular topic. We're going to hit it first, and then we're going to do our All Ohio thing here. But before we do that, I want you guys to all understand, for those of you who are here for the first time, we've already got a lot of people jumping on board with us live, and we appreciate it. The numbers just keep climbing as I keep yakking. So if you want to be part of the show, and we certainly hope that you do, you can simply hit the comment button, and your comments will appear right below me down here in this little space. You will be part of the show. Myself, Sirhan, and then when Mitch gets here in just a little bit, he's voting right at the moment. He's got stuck in the voting line, but of course, as we have talked about Sirhan, as we talked about it before we came on board, he has already voted today. I voted in the mail-in ballot, so voting is extremely important, and we wanted to make sure that Mitch got the opportunity to do that after his 9-to-5 job, so he is doing that. He will be with us shortly. Sirhan, what happened 30 years ago today in the boxing realm that you wrote an article on for us at www.welikesportspc.com?
It was George Foreman's quest and his second career to regain the heavyweight championship he lost roughly 20 years earlier on that night from the November 5th, 1994. Go back to October 30th, 1974. He lost the title to Muhammad Ali. He's been on a search to try and regain the championship. It was on that night 30 years ago today at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas where he had a shot to regain it. He fought the young upstart Michael Moore, who just came off the win over Evander Holyfield to become the champion. Mm-hmm. The fight itself, but the divers to the fight going to careers was a brief pinch. Michael Moore ruled the roost of the light heavyweight division when he basically knocked out everybody, made the jump to heavyweight, basically became somewhat of a different fighter than he was at light heavyweight. Went through a period where he changed trainers because if you follow boxing, he was under the Kronk gym with the legendary Manuel Stewart, where they parted ways. He goes to Teddy Atlas, a tough loving individual, and they paired together to get Michael Moore the heavyweight championship when he won the title from Evander Holyfield. But Michael Moore's passed, but it took Atlas's will to get Moore over the top. He becomes a champion. We're going to go George Foreman's career. We mentioned he lost the title to Ali. Basically, wasn't the same mentally because it basically haunted him forever. He had the 10-year retirement from 77 to 87. Comes back in 87, where everybody thought his career was going to be a joke, and people wonder why he decided to come back.
Right, because of his age.
Built his record. Yeah. Yeah, he was. I think he was at 38 when he started. Built his resume almost like hits a reset button. Basically he beats guys who were basically questionable in opposition until 1990 came around when he started beating top 10 guys like a Jerry Cooney and Allison Rodriguez. But people started turning to his corner when he fought Evander Holyfield for the title in 91, even though he lost, gave a good account of himself, and things all of a sudden changed. Now it was after 91. Sorry.
I'm gonna cut you off a little bit, Sir, because you're gonna give everything away right now. We want them to go to the website and read the article, brother. You're gonna give it all away. Stop, man. You're going like step
Okay.
by step. No, it's a fantastic article, Sirhan.
Yeah.
It is about George Foreman and his 30-year quest to get the title back. He did 2 records in one night with one knockout. How we'll say it, right? So go to www.weLikeSportsPC.com. Click on the article. It's the very first thing when you come up to the website. You'll certainly be able to see it as people are just jumping on board with us. The things are climbing and climbing. So I'm going to remind them one more time, you can be a part of the show as we jump into the All Ohio part of our show here momentarily. You can click on the comments. You can then type something in for us. And as long as you stay on the topic that we're on, we'll include you on the show. And then we'll talk about maybe even your comment. So before we get too much further, let's jump into All Ohio. All right, so the first thing we're going to look at in All Ohio is the Cincinnati Bengals. I see that hat on. I'm sure most people that follow the Bengals know exactly what that hat is about, where it comes from, and everything else. I got to get me one of those hats, man. I've seen you wear it all kinds of different you had the blue one on earlier today. I was watching the podcast.
Yes.
So, yeah, honestly, I think I like the blue one a little better, but we'll go with it all here, man. So, Sirhan on X, right? That's where they can find you at, buddy?
Yes.
All right, excellent. So the Bengals, they have a 4-5 record. They only have a plus 9 point total differential. They're 7th in the league in passing. They're 27th in the league in rushing. And they're 17th in total yards. So with the injury to Eric Hall Jr., should the Bengals be looking for another tight end? I know. I'm not that crazy, everybody. I know the trade deadline has come and gone. So we can talk about Eric Hall's injury, and we can also talk about Zach Moss's injury. And they did look into that one and try to fix that one. So, Sirhan, do you like the move that the Bengals made, the Chicago Bears, to try to strengthen their running back room?
Well, obviously needed a running back after the Moss injury. It was probably the best, given all the options at that position, that was probably the best available option right now for them. We consider that they needed a running back because their running back depth was just basically thinning out.
Right.
And we talk about a franchise historically who doesn't make midseason trades. It was a point to where they had no other choice but to make one. I mean, the guy was available for a 7th round draft pick, as you said, and that basically was what it came down to. It was a move that had to be made, and given the option, it's probably going to not the best available player, but the case might be the best available fit for what they need, because the big chunk of it's still going to go to Chase Brown on that offense. He's going to probably get his share. He's still going to get some of his share of carries. And the thing is, here in Cincinnati, you just said it was a must that had to take place. So I actually like the move, and it actually makes a lot of sense.
Now, don't get me wrong. I would have much rather had them trade with the Jaguars and go with Travis Etienne Jr. But I'll take Khalil Herbert. That's the guy they got from the Chicago Bears. I don't know if you saw his tweet or not. He is extremely happy that he got dealt to the Cincinnati Bengals. He put out a tweet, and it is on our Twitter handle as well. If you go over to if you go over right now to at The643&OutPod, we put that up on our Twitter, X, Twix, whatever you want to call it these days. We put it up on that social media platform for all of you guys to see. So, secondly, Was the running back their number one concern, Sir Honda? Do you think maybe they should have addressed something else with the team in order to get them to the playoffs?
Thought they needed to beef up the defensive line a little bit. Outside of Trey Hendrickson, the defensive line has been very, very hit and miss. And I want to be nice when I say it was, because the guys on the defensive front have been absolutely pedestrian at best. I mean, they've been getting beat up on the line of scrimmage all season long. Maybe another area they should have probably looked at is another corner, or beef up the secondary, because that corner has given up amongst one of the, I don't know what the rankings are, but one of the worst in giving up big play after big play after big play. And thought maybe an extra corner could have really helped them out. Now, early in the season, they had Dax Hill, who blew his knee out, early in the season, and it basically left a void. And they're trying to do it by committee, and that's not really helping. I thought that was something I thought they should have really addressed the need, because that defense has been absolutely atrocious, especially the defensive front and the defensive middle, where they've just been pounded all season long. Outside of Trey, if Trey Hendrickson doesn't get any kind of defensive pressure on the quarterback, that defense is getting absolutely toasted. And that's basically why the team is where it's at the moment.
All right, and I agree with you. I wish they would have done a little bit more, but I'm also pretty happy with what they did, and the fact that it at least addressed the need. Right? Zach Moss went down with a neck injury. This is especially in this division that the Bengals reside in, with the Ravens and with the Browns and with the Steelers. It's a run division. They just will pound the ball down your throat. And I was afraid that if Cincinnati didn't have that, then they wouldn't make it very far. So I was glad that they did address that particular need. Here's one. We're going to throw it up here on the screen for everybody to see, that I think is very, very important. One of the reasons why that we've got Sirhan on here right at the moment is this question. Is Baltimore a must-win game for the Cincinnati Bengals this Thursday? What do you think, sir?
I think so, because they put themselves in a hole early with the 0-3 start, then with losing to New England, Kansas, and Washington. Mm-hmm. Now you're going to have to go in an uphill battle. Not only you talk about for a playoff spot, but still a bit of a slight chance to contend for the AFC North title when you have to play Pittsburgh twice later on, and we know how good Pittsburgh has just become this season. I think this is a must-win just to stay in the wild card hunt, because not only that, they only have 2 wins in the AFC conference, and conference record tiebreakers are, when it comes to a playoff positioning, is a must. And they're only 2. I think we'll see something like 2 and 4 or 2 and 5, 2 and 3, or 2 and 4 in the conference, and in that 5, 6, and 7 seed, where it's basically bottled up right now. And any win you can get in the conference to try and get a playoff spot is a must. They already put themselves in the hole to begin with, and now they have to try to climb out of it. But I'll just say I liked what I saw the other day against the Raiders. I sort of like their confidence heading into this game coming up Thursday. But I do agree that this is a must-win just to keep themselves in the playoff hunt, because that 6 and 7 spot is going to be fully loaded by 4 or 5 teams competing. Anytime you can get a conference win, it's going to be a big plus when it comes to tiebreakers down the line at the end of the season.
And I will certainly give you the part of the tiebreakers being very important to them. But I'm not sure if I'm going to say that it's a must-win here for them. And that's simply because of the rest of their schedule. I'm trying to look it up right now here. I'm getting there, I swear. I know they played Pittsburgh twice, but they're really the only team besides Baltimore today, or excuse me, on Thursday, that they really have a big time challenge from, as far as that part goes. I think at least the rest of their schedule is pretty much a cupcake schedule. They've got Tennessee in there. They've got Dallas. Go ahead, sir.
Now, say after Baltimore, they go to play the Chargers, and it's going to be we talked about the tiebreaker. Another one that's going to be in the scenario, because the Chargers and the Bengals are both in the conference matchup. You do make an excellent point, and I do agree in that extent. I say anytime you get one of the AFC, I think it's a must. Given outside of the Chargers, the schedule does get a little softer, But here's the thing I have a problem with is the fact that they had the earlier part against the early schedule against New England where they basically got dog walked on their home field. I mean, that's where I say it's a mess because when you lose those kind of so-called gimme games like Thursday now become almost imperative to win. The pressure's starting to come up a little bit when basically we consider the expectation that they were supposed to be a deep AFC contender this season. It's basically that's why I call it a must win because they put themselves in the hole with the tougher losses early in the year. And of course, just before they beat the Raiders, they had the difficult home loss of the Philly, where they just got absolutely swamped. So when you not only losing the games you should win, but also you can't take care of home field, you're going to put yourselves in must-win situations down the line, and that's when the pressure starts to mount.
And absolutely, the Bengals have put themselves in must-win. Mitch, I see you, buddy. I'll bring you up here as soon as we're done with the Bengals conversation. We'll go into the Buckeyes, and then we'll go into the Reds. All right? Wave to me or something. Show me that you can. Okay, cool. He hears me. He can see me. I can see him. We'll bring him up on stage here with us in just a moment. So their remaining schedule, as what Sirhan was pointing out to here, is they are at the Ravens. They're at the Chargers, which, by the way, if you haven't seen, they did it today. They flexed that game to the Sunday night game. It was supposed to be Indianapolis and somebody else. I can't remember who it was.
The Jets.
Right off
the Jets.
The Jets. Okay, yeah, two not so great teams. So they moved that one away, and now the Bengals and the Chargers are going to be that Sunday night game, which actually I think benefits the Bengals some because you're off the short week and you're going to give them a little bit more time. We're going to push them back till Sunday night. So I like that idea. I think that really helps the Bengals. After that Chargers game, you got the bye. Then you do Pittsburgh. Then you are at Dallas, which the way Dallas is right at the moment, I don't know. I think the Sisters of the Blind could beat them right at the moment. Then you're at Tennessee. Then Cleveland comes to Cincinnati. Denver comes to Cincinnati. And Pittsburgh it's there as well. So that's the remaining schedule. I don't really see a big gauntlet in there past Pittsburgh and Baltimore. So I really think that they're going to be, I don't want to say in a good position, but they're not in as bad a position as I think some of the pundits are saying that they are just because of the teams they've got left. So with that, our final question here in our All Ohio segment on those Cincinnati Bengals, I'm going to tell you, I think they're going to be 11-6. Sirhan, what will the Bengals record be at season's end?
They can play like they did Sunday afternoon when they beat the Raiders. I think that's possible. I'm gonna go a little lower. I'm gonna say 10-7 because I still lean toward. I think they split the series with Pittsburgh. But I would go 10-7. I could possibly see 11-6, but it's going to depend on if they play like they did on Sunday against the Raiders because it's probably their most complete win of the season. Granted, it is the Raiders, and we know the Raiders aren't necessarily the greatest right now. But given after how they lost to New England Week 1, the way they beat the Raiders, especially how impressive the defensive side was when Trey Hendrickson was just a man amongst boys. The defense plays like that, I think they can trend to a double-digit winning season.
And I agree with you. The other thing that we're going to do right here, right now, is I'm going to bring up our usual host, Mitch. He's going to, the stash and everything is coming. There he is. What's up, buddy?
How's it going, guys?
Hey, we're doing good,
man. On?
So you made sure you voted, right?
Yeah, sorry for the delay. It was a little crazy, but yeah, got my vote in. So.
All right, excellent. We appreciate you doing that. We want to make sure that you got that all in here, buddy. So yes. All right, Mitch is with us now. We have started in our All Ohio. Mitch, I know you weren't with us in the beginning. Somebody, I know this is going to be a big shock to you, but somebody had some technical difficulties, just like he is right now, trying to figure out how this is going to work here. So we started the show a little late. So that's why we're only in the first part of the first segment. So don't freak out too much. Like, heck on it, did that guy just not shut up? What's going on with him? No, it wasn't that bad. We didn't start till 15 after. So
no worries.
Here we go.
Power through here, try to get it close to that 2-hour mark.
Yes, we will. So we got a lot of things going on here. We are now going to go from the All Ohio into Ohio State. So let me run this down for us all real fast as we get our notes put together. They're 7-1. They're third in the AP Top 25. They're 40th in passing yards. They're 59th in rushing yards, and they're 20th in total yards. So here's the first question. Georgia lost to then number 4 Alabama by 7 at Alabama. Ohio State lost to number 1 number 1 Oregon at Oregon by 1 point. So should Ohio State be number 2 and Georgia be number 3? Mitch, you just joined us. Let's ask this: do you like? So right now, and I haven't seen the new poll because one of the reasons why we had these, I was going to call them technical difficulties, was because of my own technical difficulty of sleeping. So I pulled a 16-hour shift last night. I came home. I was like, you know what? I'm going to take a quick nap real quick before I go. And then the alarm went off, and it's one of those deals to where I smacked the alarm, and then before you know it, my wife is coming in, and hey, don't you have a podcast today? Oh, crap. So I jumped up doing all this stuff, right? So that was the technical difficulty, my ability to stay awake. So I haven't seen, have they brought out the new football, what is it they're calling it now? The college football rankings, have they brought those out, gentlemen?
They just did. I got a notification a little bit ago. It's Oregon, OSU, Georgia, and Miami.
Oh, listen at the mustache guy down here. Oh, I just got a notification. Yeah, woo, big dog down here with his notification. All right, buddy. So in that, they actually did move Ohio State to number 2 then.
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
I'm going to give you
advice here. I agree with that. I think that was an impressive loss to Oregon. I do think Oregon's the true number 1 in the country, so I agree with that. I think you jumped Georgia there. Georgia's had some less than impressive games recently. Carson Beck's really got to figure some stuff out, so I'm in agreement with them for once, actually.
Okay. Sirhan, what do you think, bud?
Well, I find Miami at number 4 sort of interesting. That's one I wouldn't expect. The other 3, I don't have a problem with, because people forget Georgia just went into Texas and just basically just beat them pretty handily. And the game wasn't even as close as the score was. So I can understand the jump to number 3. The Oregon or Ohio State, that's the top 2. I don't have a problem with it. I agree with Mitch. I think the rankings is just spot on, perfect, and. We consider coming off the big win they had in Penn State. I think a solid number 2 for Ohio State, I think, is right. It's perfect for them at the moment.
All right. So through 10 weeks, OSU has allowed the least amount of points in the Big Ten with 96, and Indiana has scored the most points in the Big Ten with 419. Mitch, which is more impressive, only allowing 96 or scoring 419?
Honestly, both are impressive, but OSU keeping their opponents under 100 points scored for the entire season going into week 10 or through week 10. That's really impressive. When you put that stat out there, I did not expect that. That's huge. Speaks to their defense and just their well-roundedness as a team. Their offense, there's some question marks too, but I mean, your offense can have question marks if you're holding guys through week 10 under 100 points.
Now, I know that you don't spell it the same way, Mr. Day, but I'm sure you're related to the Ohio State head coach somehow, right?
One can only dream, right?
Right? One can only dream. That's true. So what do you think is more impressive, 96 or 419?
I like them. I agree with Mitch. I like them both. I think the thing with Ohio State, you got to, because how they bounce back defensively after just getting thrown on by Oregon, because Denzel Burke was basically just toasted that entire game. For them to come back and have the defensive effort they had after that game, especially going to Penn State and basically just shutting down Penn State, I think of that to be very, very impressive. I do agree about Indiana. I didn't see this one coming at all this season. I don't think anybody did. For them to just put the numbers they have on the offensive side of the ball and to jump, I believe they jumped to the top 10, if I'm correct, to do what they're doing right now. It's very, very impressive.
Yeah, in the AP poll, they're number 8. They jumped like 5 spots to get up to number 8. So we'll get to that because that's going to be the last question we talk about here in our Ohio State part of All Ohio Today. Before we get to question 4, let's get to question 3, which is this: will Ohio State finish in the top 4 of the college football rankings and get a first round bye? In fact, we're going to pop that question up right down here at the bottom. I did have a little bit to kind of throw some of these questions up. You'll see a few of these here later on in the show as well. So, Sirhan, I'm going to go back to you, buddy. Will Ohio State finish in the top 4 of the college football rankings? And of course, if you do, you get a first round bye, and that's huge in this 12-team playoff. So what do you think? Are they going to finish in the top 4?
I think so.
Okay, so that means they have to beat Indiana, right? Because if they lose to Indiana,
Yes.
they're not finishing in the top 4, right? Okay.
Probably more likely not.
All right, Mitch, what do you think, buddy? Top 4? They're going to lose somewhere along the line. What do you see Ohio State doing here in the next few weeks?
No, I agree. I think they will end up top 4. I think that Indiana game is the only question mark there. I mean, other than that, Purdue, Northwestern, Michigan probably aren't going to give much of a fight. That Indiana is going to be a really good game. If Indiana keeps climbing, I mean, in its close game, 1 score, they might fall down to 4. But I think that's the lowest they go without any losses. If they hold on for the win in Indiana, I can't see them dropping outside of the top 4. Just from having a close game against Indiana.
Right. Now, it's at Ohio State, which is, of course, advantage Ohio State, right? The other thing is what might be interesting in this whole thing. I really started looking at some things last night, and that is, I believe, Tennessee and Georgia play the week before Ohio State and Indiana play. So if Tennessee loses, they're currently ranked ahead of Indiana. So Indiana could actually jump higher in the polls, and by the time Ohio State plays them, they could be, I believe, as high as what I was looking at is like number 6 or something. So, I mean, if you think about it, if Ohio State loses to the number 1 team in the country by a point, and then they beat the number 3 team, and then they turn around, even if they just stay at 8, right? So they beat 2 top 10 teams, and they lose to Oregon by 1. I agree with you guys. I don't see any way imaginable that you can't put Ohio State in that top 4. So last thing, if Ohio State runs the table to close out the season, they will have beaten 4 of the top 5 Big Ten teams because they beat Iowa as well. And right now, Iowa is number 4 in the 10. So, and they lost to Oregon by 1 point. Should this make a big difference to the selection committee, or should it just be like, okay, you beat the teams you're supposed to beat and you move on? Mitch, I'm going to start with you. Should it make a big difference to the selection committee when they go to do these rankings that Ohio State has beaten, if they beat Indiana, 4 of the top 5 teams in the Big Ten?
Yeah, I do. I do think it should make a big difference, and I think it's because the Big Ten conference itself, one of the best conferences in college football, and they're not just beating nobodies. Those top 5 teams in the Big Ten are some of the best in the country. So those wins just aren't, gimme wins or easily looked over. I definitely think it should be a big impact and big influence on the selection committee. I don't see how it wouldn't be with the respect that the Big Ten gets these days, as it should. So yeah, I definitely think it should be a big part of that decision for them.
Okay, excellent. Sirhan, let me get your opinion on the same thing. Should it be a big deal to the selection committee if they beat 4 of the 5 Big Ten teams?
When you consider that a few of them were in the top 10, we consider Penn State was number 3 going in, and Indiana could probably climb up their current spot. It has to be a strong consideration for the selection committee. I mean, as you said, for the top 5 and the top 10, we can. And Penn State was number 3 going in. I believe even the loss to Oregon, I think Oregon was number 2 or number 3. I can't remember which. And Indiana's going to might jump from the 8th spot by the time they play Ohio State. And if Ohio State beats them, it's going to be a real big feather in their cap, and it's good. You can't deny them at that point.
Right, and I like how you just said that. You almost can't deny it, right? They earned it. There are some teams, and like right at the moment, I don't know where. I know Mitch, maybe you comment on this before we get off of the college football part here. Where Alabama is in these new college football playoff rankings. But right now, they brought Alabama back in, and they're number 11 right now. They're basically the first team outside the top 10, and I don't think they've earned that spot whatsoever. But I will say, like you just said, Sirhan, if Ohio State beats Indiana, they're going to earn that spot that they get in the college football playoff rankings. They're not going to back into a spot or anything like that. They're really going to earn that. Mitch, I see you staring at your computer there off to the side. I have the utmost amount of faith that once I complete this sentence, you're going to have that update for us. Where's Alabama at, buddy?
Yeah, Bama snuck into the top 12. They're at 11 here, in Boise State just behind them to round out the top 12 there in this one. Texas still hovering at number 5, and then Tennessee and Penn State actually at 6, Tennessee at 7, and then Indiana at 8.
Okay.
So
then again,
10 teams in there. Still really speaks to those wins and even the loss to Oregon just by 1 point. I mean, yeah, I'm in complete agreement. You can't really deny them at that point.
All right, so we've done 2 of our 3 all Ohio segment. Like I said, today's a little different. We had Sirhan on with us. I used to live in Ohio. Sirhan lives in Ohio now. Then we're going to cross over with Mitch living in Arizona, and then I live in Arizona now. So a lot of our fans I know are both from Ohio and Arizona. Not that I'm slighting any of you from all of the other 48 states, but those are my 2 favorites. So that we're going to go with those 2 today. So we're going to jump into conversation about the Cincinnati Reds. Sirhan, I'm going to start with you, buddy. The Reds have made 10 moves, and they offered Nick Martinez the qualifying offer, which, by the way, we have a great article up by Ricky Logan, who does our stuff Cincinnati Reds-wise on www.weLikeSportsPC.com. So go over there, grab on that article. It'll tell you exactly what Nick Martinez meant to the Reds this past year and why they did what they did as far as the qualifying offer. So it's a real simple question, Sirhan. So far, do you like the move that the Cincinnati Reds have made?
So far, so good. I mean, of course, the offseason just started, but so far, I like what I see. Of course, hiring Terry Francona, there's a bit of a different because I'm honest, I was in Cincinnati the day after he was hired. It was hired. You could almost feel like a different buzz around baseball, which basically seemed like it was saturated and just dying when David Bell was there, just sucked the life out of baseball. When Francona came, it was like a whole different buzz all over Cincinnati that took place. And as far as the move so far, I like it. I like what they've done so far. And I think, hiring a manager like Terry Francona, I think there's now a chance to put actually a product together. Because I don't think you brought in Terry Francona to put together a rebuilding product. You brought him in here to compete in at least the NL Central with teams like the Brewers and the Cardinals. Now's the time, I think, to start making moves to start to compete and maybe even overtake the division, because that division is sort of a bit on the flat side at the moment. I think if you make the right moves, you can compete and maybe overtake Milwaukee for the NL Central. I like what they've done so far.
Okay, now don't make Mitch too upset. All right, he's a big Milwaukee Brewers fan here, so don't be saying that the division's trash or anything. His Brewers, I don't think it's a slight on top of the garbage pail. Okay, so they Mitch, what do you think? The Reds moved so far this season.
Yeah, no, I agree. The NL Central is very winnable. Anybody could take that right now. Any of the teams, honestly. The Pirates aren't even out of it completely if they start making the right moves and add some more pieces. But I really like the moves they made. I know we talked about the qualifying offer to Nick Martinez a little bit last week.
Right.
I still think it's a little bit too high if they want to keep him in the role he's in right now, kind of bouncing between a starter and a long relief guy. But hopefully that means, they are going to plant him in that starter role because that money makes a lot more sense in the starter role. So I think the moves they made so far, I think hiring Francona is the biggest move they made, and that's going to be the biggest difference maker unless they really go out there and shake up the free agency market this offseason. But no, I like the moves they're making. I think the NL Central is just a crapshoot every time. They just go out there and beat each other up every season. And if you have winning records against the NL Central, you can easily win that division.
Okay, so we got 4 questions that we're going to do with the Reds. We're only on the first one right at the moment. We have gotten both of our opinions on that one. Mitch, I'm going to start with you on this second question because I'm going to give you a little secret thing to do on the side. I didn't put this in the notes, but I know that you can do this real quick as you talk for the beginning, and then we'll have Sirhan and myself kind of go at this next question for a second. I want us to look at, I know we're going to go back to the Bengals for a second, but let's give our people in Ohio hope, okay? You're the gambling guy. That's why it says money bags under Mitch Middlebrook there, right? So tell us what the odds are of the Bengals winning the division and the Bengals winning the Super Bowl, all right? So, but let me ask you this question first. Don't go diving too much into your, I see you already clicking and typing and the lights changed on you. I mean, that's not that it matters. That star still shines, baby. But, so here's the question, okay? Former Red and Pirate great Dave Parker is one of 7 players on what's called the Classic Baseball Era Committee ballot. I had to make sure I got that right. And he is part of that Baseball Hall of Fame. So my thing with you is Dave Parker is not yet in the Baseball Hall of Fame. Should Dave Parker be in the Baseball Hall of Fame?
To be honest with you, not the most familiar with Dave Parker, so I had to do some research here. On numbers alone, I mean, I think he's got an okay case. I think, looking at that everything, 7-time All-Star, MVP, 3-time Gold Glove winner. I think it's close. 290 batting average for his career. The thing that really stands out to me that I think helps him here is a 40 WAR over his entire career. In that on-base percentage, 339 and an OPS plus of 121. Not seeing his games, and me, Mike, I'm a big eye test guy.
Right.
I think I'm really on the fence here. I could see it going either way and make the case for it. But man, it's really hard without too much context of actually seeing him play.
Right. So the fact that you're so darn young and that you're making me feel old is the reason you're not sure if Dave Parker should be in the Hall of Fame, right?
Yeah,
you know how
exactly.
to make it really good, man.
And I want to clarify. Yeah, you said Bengals. Were you looking for Reds odds on that?
No, I know we're in the Reds, but I want to give people hope, right? I want I want people to say, before they wrap that black and orange striped rope around their neck and jump off the deep end with it. I want to make sure we give them a little bit of hope here. Okay, so yes, I said Bengals. I'm going to go ahead and stick with the Bengals. I would like to know what their odds are for winning their division, and I'd like to know what their odds are for the Super Bowl. We'll get back to that here in just a moment. Sirhan, did you actually see Dave Parker play? Without telling everybody that I might not be the oldest guy on this screen right now, but I'm sure I am.
I've studied footage of him in the past when I followed baseball. I put up the numbers like Mitch said, and everything I've seen. I think the guy should be in the Hall of Fame. I mean, I'm not going to piggyback what Mitch said. I mean, his WAR and his on base percentage was just one of the best of that era. I mean, a lot of people calling it a crime that he's not in. I won't go that far, just largely because I haven't seen him as much as anybody else. But from everything I've seen from the eye test to the numbers, it validates that the guy should be in the Hall of Fame.
All right, so here comes the old guy in the room, right? I've seen Dave Parker play. He was called the Cobra back in the day. He was with the Pirates, the quote unquote "We Are Family" Pirates from the song, and probably neither one of you have ever heard that song. Okay, especially not Mitch. I'm sure he's like, what song is that? I may have to look that up. We'll play that later. But I think Dave Parker was an imposing figure. Was the big thing that I will get. They called him the Cobra because of how he recoiled that bat back and how he would strike. Fantastic defender in the outfield. So I hope that he gets in. I think he has the stats to get in. And I love, as I kind of wrap this up, I love what both of you said. Mitch, the younger guy in the room, right, wants to bring in the analytical type stats. Say, okay, well, even though he played way back when, we can still look at those analytical stats today and bring that into play. And then Sirhan was like, well, yes, but of that era, is what he said. And you're right. You have to look at the modern day stats, and you also have to look at what he did with his peers, right? You can't compare. Everybody wants to compare like Aaron Judge and Babe Ruth, and that's just not a fair comparison because they played in different eras, they played in different times. So I love what both of you said, and I really hope that the Cobra, Dave Parker, gets into the Hall of Fame this way. According to Gordon Wentmeyer, the Reds have have reached out to Joey Votto about several roles that saying that he could be a good fit for them. Sir, I'm going to start with you. Do you want to see Joey Votto back with the Reds? And if so, what role do you think he should play with Cincinnati?
I wouldn't mind it. I think because he's beloved here in Cincinnati. Obviously, I think just for that, I would like to see it. I think it would help boost a lot of things with the Reds organization. Maybe some kind of a hitting coach would probably fit for him because he was a fantastic hitter, especially the years he was contending for MVP awards. And the Reds hitting was just at times last season, as you know, was just abysmal at best, especially when it came to runners in scoring position. They were not the greatest at it. I think a role like that would actually do wonders for him and the organization because he's just his presence in that dugout would absolutely do a lot because a lot of the players that are still there absolutely loves playing with Joey Votto in his final year in Cincinnati, and I'm sure they would welcome him back with open arms. Maybe some kind of a hitting coach type. Maybe I probably would go with this. I could probably see it because they can use someone to help them get some hits, especially with runners in scoring position. Because there were times last season, as I said, they weren't the greatest when it comes to generating runs.
All right, I want to say thank you to everybody who is, man, the numbers just keep growing. We are jumping and jumping here. I'm sure that it's because my face is shrunk down here, so that, we're not scaring as many little kids off of the broadcast tonight. They're sticking with us. So we got Mitch Middlebrook down here at the bottom. Mitch, where can they get you out on Twitter, buddy?
Yeah, you'll find me at Mitchellbrook52 on Twitter.
All right, and then of course the guy with the John Deere tractor. It looks like there in the background, or the John Deere piece of equipment there. I guess it's not a tractor. What is that? A cart or something? What is that back there?
Gator. It's a gator.
He doesn't mean like a Miami, Florida gator. All right, for those of you listening, clear it up. Okay, but he's got the equipment in the background. He actually is in Ohio, Cincinnati to be exact. And Sirhan, where can we get you on Twitter at, buddy?
Handle is at Sirhan on X.
All right, at Sirhan on X and at MitchellBrook52. So we got that out of the way. Mitch, what do you think about Joey Votto possibly joining the Reds and what role he may play?
I would really like to see that. I think they need to rebuild that relationship after, kind of the tearing down of it this last year. I think it'd be a really good fit for both of them. As Sirhan said, a hitting coach position would be really great for him. I mean, talking about a guy who popped up to the infield, I think one time in his career, or the first baseman and catcher one time in his career. Just an insane stat, a great approach at the plate. And even if the numbers weren't there, he always had a great approach through his career. You just kind of got to get through those slumps in baseball. It's not always going to be there in the numbers. But I'm sure that batting average balls in play was insane for Joey Votto throughout his entire career. So yeah, I think that would be a really cool reunion for them.
All right, Sirhan, I think you wanted to say something else there, right? I saw
yeah.
What was that guy's name? The basketball guy, Mitch, with Matumbo, right? I saw the finger up there. So go ahead,
just want to add one last thing about what Mitch said. His final year, even though the numbers were bare out, when the Reds went on that lengthy winning streak in the middle of the season when they won 12 straight games, just his presence there just boosted everybody up about 10 decibels energy-wise. I mean, I was at the game where they beat Atlanta, the last of the 12-game winning streak. When he hit that second home run, it was basically a grand slam. All the guys, especially Jonathan India, was just jumping up for joy when it left the ballpark. The how beloved Joey Votto is in that clubhouse, they bring him back, the morale is going to boost up significantly. His impact is second to none here in Cincinnati.
Yeah, I agree. You really can't understate the impact that he had on that ball club. And just the city in general. I mean, bringing somebody like that back, people would be buying tickets just to be in the stadium with them and to get a chance to see him in the dugout. So I think that'd be a huge move and really help rebuild that relationship that might have soured on both sides a little bit for him.
All right, and I certainly agree that he's done really well at first base. Maybe he could even be an infield coach per se, and kind of do a hybrid kind of thing, where he could do like an assistant hitting coach and then a first base coach, or maybe even a base running. I know he is not the fleetest of foot, but you don't have to be the fleetest of foot to be a good base runner. So there are a lot of different aspects and roles that I think Joey Votto can fill. But my my reservation here is that, you know, he's been paid so much money. Is he going to be willing to come back and fulfill a role like this and accept a smaller paycheck? That's going to be, is his ego going to allow him to come back and only get, $900,000 or something for a year instead of millions of dollars like he already has? Or is he going to take the mindset of, the Reds paid me on this huge contract, and maybe he'll take the mindset of, I owe them a little something for giving me all this money? I don't know. Obviously, I'm not a big enough person to be able to talk to Joey. I've spoken with him a couple times, but it's just kind of like a hey, hello, how you doing? Thanks for coming to spring training kind of thing. And man, I would love to get his autograph once or twice more. He's one of my favorite players. He's second to me in baseball history, only to Pete Rose. So Pete's first, and then Votto is second. So I'd love to be able to see that. Mitch, we'll get to you here in just a moment. I know you've got that. You've looked all that up for us, and we're going to try to give some people hope. But let's do our last Reds question. You can see it pop up on the screen here. I'm going to shrink us down just a little bit. There we go. So do you see the Reds making several moves, or do you see them making one blockbuster move? Sirhan, I'll start with you because you mentioned it earlier. You said, and I agree with you, you don't bring Terry Francona in to rebuild anything, right? You bring Terry Francona in because you're ready to win. So if they're ready to win, do you think they're going to make a bunch of small moves, or do you think they're going to go out and they're going to get, Juan Soto or something like that, and they're going to make one big blockbuster move to carry them into the season?
If they get Juan Soto, I swear Cincinnati's going to be turned into a big bunch of confetti if that happens. I think it'll be a bunch of tier two. Right. I think it'll be a bunch of tier two moves for now because, the free agency landscape is not the greatest from everything I've read. And Cincinnati, the thing is, Cincinnati sometimes isn't necessarily the big spenders like a New York or an LA. But I think they can get some tier two guys to probably get this thing rolling to where it's said with the hiring of Frank Kuna to where they can get themselves going and start competing for the NL Central. I don't know if they'll make the one blockbuster move unless something just blows them away to their liking. But I think they'll make a couple like tier 2 to 3 tier 2 moves for starters to see where it gets them, and I think to start to get this ball rolling here a little bit.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that's where they start. It's kind of they're in a weird spot right now. I think they'll wait to see what the regular season is like for them this year, and then maybe make some moves, mid-season and close to the deadline if they are going to make that push. And if they're just, producing but just a few pieces away, I think that's kind of where they'll land and end up making those bigger moves. But I'm in agreement with you. I think for now this offseason, they'll make a few sizable moves, but nothing too crazy and nothing to shake up anything. They're definitely going to be careful on that spending. And then if the team can produce the way they want to, maybe they'll make some in-season moves to push them over the top.
If we think of the qualifying offer to Nick Martinez, I think they're going to be a little patient a little bit because I just saw the number. That's ridiculous. I've never seen a qualifying offer for a guy who's basically a back-end starter to a front-end reliever. I'm sure something will work itself out with those two until that situates itself. That's just a crazy number. I never seen anything like that.
Yeah, I agree. I think, it's kind of confusing to me to see that when it is, like you said, a back-end starter, front-end reliever. I think, one, it's, they're kind of hoping, well, maybe if he declines it, we still at least get the conditional draft pick. That's kind of a nice little consolation prize. But I also think, it could be an indicator of, hey, we are going to spend some money this offseason. We are going to try to bolster this team, and we're not going to worry about the $3-4 million that we could save, bringing somebody that we like back. So it could go either way. Hopefully it shows that they are going to start spending some money and get over that $100 million that they spent last year. But you never know. It's too early to tell.
Right, and I appreciate you guys all hanging out. Our fans have not dropped off, even though we were dropping off. And don't get me wrong, my screen looks a lot better when it doesn't have my face on it. But in order for us to have a good show, I guess that face has got to be there at least a little bit. So, thank you guys for sticking with us. Nobody's dropped off, which we appreciate. A little bit of technical stuff here. We're going to get that ironed out. I closed out all my windows and all that kind of stuff. So we are just you and I and Mitch and Sirhan here. So we are good to go. I wanted to say, kind of wrapping this up for the All Ohio part, that the selection committee that may or may not bring Parker into the Baseball Hall of Fame, that announcement will be December 8th. It'll be 7 p.m. on the MLB Network. And the last thing we need to do as we wrap up this All Ohio part is go back to Mitch here. Mitch, give us some hope, buddy. What are the odds of the Cincinnati Bengals winning their division? And what are the odds of the Cincinnati Bengals making it to the Super Bowl?
Yeah, this might give some hope to people. Their odds out in Vegas to win the AFC North is not as bad as I thought it was going to be. And it's probably from that rocky start that the Ravens had, but they're plus 850 right now. Ravens heavy favorite at minus 185, and then the Steelers plus 200 to win that division. But 850, I mean, when it's still possible, those are pretty good odds. A little bit of a long shot, but still not bad. I'll give you a little bonus one to make the playoffs alone. Not just win the division. They're plus 100, and for yes, and no is minus 125. So they're right.
Okay, so Sirhan, what do you think? Would you put your money on the Cincinnati Bengals for doing any of those things, buddy?
I probably put something to making the playoffs. The division, I'm a little 50-50 on. But I'll just say one thing about those division odds. One thing, Pittsburgh hasn't played their division games yet. They're going to get to that division part of their schedule coming up.
Right, they have not played anyone in their division. Not one of the teams in their division yet. That's just insane to me that NFL would do that.
Yeah, they didn't do them any favors. But I think that's probably what Cincinnati will have going for them is they're ready. If they can beat Baltimore Thursday night, they would have 2 wins in the division, and it'll be a leg up on. Even though they're behind both teams, it would be almost like a leg up because remember Baltimore lost to Cleveland not a couple weeks ago. So if they can beat Baltimore Thursday night, that's 2 wins in the division. That's probably more than I think in terms of most division wins would probably trump Baltimore and Pittsburgh despite the standings, and it would give them I think a good confident boost going into the rest of the season.
All right, and I agree with that, bud. All right, so we are done with the All Ohio. We're going to jump into All Arizona. But first, Sirhan, I'm going to give you the opportunity to exit stage left if you want, or if you want to stay on with us and go through the rest of the show. You can do either one, buddy. I know it's getting kind of late back there in the great state of Ohio.
I'll hang around for a little bit.
He's going to hang around. Look out! All right. Well, if you do that, you got to tell Mitch off. All right, that's my only thing. At least sometime during the broadcast, okay? All right. So
okay.
We're gonna jump into All Arizona. All right, in our segment of All Arizona, just like we did in All Ohio, we're going to look at some Arizona stuff. We're going to look at college basketball. We're going to look at the Arizona Cardinals. We're going to look at the Phoenix Suns. We're going to look at the ASU Sun Devils. All of them are in Arizona. All of them are making some news. All of them are making waves. And all of them, Mitch and I, are fans of because we live here in that state. Once again, how we crossed all this over and connected all these dots, right? I'm Mike Valentine. You got Sirhan Day up there in the upper right-hand corner if you're looking at the screen, and then Mitch is down there on the bottom holding both of us up, because he's a young guy. He's got all the strength to be able to do that, right? So we got him down there at the bottom. Thanks, Mitch. We appreciate that. Now, don't be hating now. Yeah, I used to live in Ohio, so I'm there with all of them. Got my ear to the ground. I'll even give you a little bit of a scoop here. So I was almost going to cry. I'm hearing Jonathan India is about to get crazy. I talked to a couple of good sources today. The San Francisco Giants are really after Jonathan India. and I hear that the Reds have a couple people that they're looking at in the Giants system. So that trade can come at the winter meetings here. I believe they're next week in the winter meetings. Don't be surprised. All right.
Well, the India trade talk's been going wild over the last year and a half. So if it happens, it doesn't surprise me. If it doesn't happen, it won't surprise me either.
Right, I get it. So let's jump into all Arizona, Mitch. Let's start with you. Grand Canyon University is where we're going to start. I'm going to have to give you a little bit of background here because I'm not sure how familiar the audience as a whole is with Grand Canyon University. So give me a second. Let me give some good background here, and then we'll jump into the questions. All right. So Grand Canyon University, or GCU as they're called, currently competes in the Western Atlantic Conference. They accepted an invitation to join the WCC, which is the West Coast Conference, in 2025. But the Lopes have reneged on that offer in favor of joining the Mountain West. They did that just a few days ago. So they're going to join the Mountain West Conference in 2026 instead of going to the West Coast Conference in 2025. The Mountain West has 8 football schools, allowing them to keep their FBS eligibility. And with adding GCU, they now have 9 full members, which are GCU, Air Force, New Mexico, Nevada, San Jose State, UNLV, Wyoming, Hawaii, and UTEP, which is the University of Texas El Paso. If you're like, what in the world is UTEP? That's what it stands for. So the Pac-12 is actually still one football program short right at the moment of being able to compete, having that 8. So, Mitch, what does this mean for Grand Canyon University, buddy?
It means a lot of good things, honestly, to be, in a conference with teams like that, Air Force, New Mexico, Nevada, UNLV, Hawaii, UTEP. That gets you a lot of extra eyes on your programs and in your school in general. I think it's a really good thing for them. It'll be interesting to see how they adapt to a new conference. But yeah, I think overall, really good to see. GCU is a smaller one of the schools in Phoenix here, but still, kind of have a good name for themselves.
All right. Now, Sir Hunt, I'm going to take the liberty to assume that you're not real familiar with GCU. So, I'm going to turn the question around to you that you can kind of a broad question that you don't have to be familiar with GCU to answer this question. So here's this. What is your opinion of GCU reneging on their WAC commitment when they said, hey, we are going to join your conference, and then the Mountain West comes in and says, no, we want you over here. And they're like, oh, well, that grass is greener over there, so let's jump the fence. What do you think about someone or, even a school like that who reneges on a commitment and goes somewhere else?
Well, it's all about the almighty dollar, but we can think about the 2 conferences you guys mentioned. I mean, look at this. I'm looking at this note that you guys sent me. Look, this is a nice laundry list of schools to join. I mean, we get a small school to join a big conference like this. I think it's a big deal. I mean, especially consider how strong of a conference MWC is, or the potential it can be. I think it's a big plus for them.
Right. So you don't have a problem with them reneging on their contract just because they can do better when they go on the other side of the fence?
I don't. I mean, that's basically what we were stuck with now. The landscape of college football conference. Of course, we saw what happened with the demolishing of the Pac-12. The teams going to the Big Ten. So, I mean, this is the landscape we're stuck with now.
Right. This is just kind of the aftermath, right? This is like, we already had the major earthquake. Now we're getting some aftershocks, right? All right. So, for the sake of time, too, Mitch, I'm gonna go on to question number 3, and I'll bring it back to you, buddy. So the GCU president, again, Grand Canyon University's GCU, that president, Brian Mueller, said the premier basketball conference in the West is what the Mountain West is going to be. He's saying that the team or the division that they just joined is going to be the premier basketball conference in the West. Do you really think they can do that? Premier basketball conference in the West?
I think that's hard to do. Sure, GCU, UNLV, New Mexico, and San Jose State, they always have solid basketball teams. Outside of those guys, I mean, I'm not sure what those programs look like. I know Hawaii's kind of had some ups and downs, but I don't. That might be a little bit strong of a statement to make, especially before they even get on the court. But Hey, I mean, if they could put their money where their mouth is, and a few of those teams make the March Madness tournament, we might be eating our words.
Okay, I agree with you, but I think it's a pretty bold statement. I'm not sure if you want to, I'm not sure if you want to set yourself up that high on the ladder before you even, you're not even to the ladder yet, right? You still got 2 years before you even get to the ladder, and you're already saying how high that expectation is. That might be a doom and gloom thing. Okay, so the fourth question on TCU, I'm going to pose to both of you here for a second. Sirhan, I'm going to start with you. GCU currently is a really nice basketball school. I know you don't live out here, so you might not know a whole lot about that, but they have started off at the lower point. It was a religious school. I won't go into, they're being sued right now by 2 or 3 different conglomerates and stuff like that. And there's a little bit of a mess going on as far as that part of it goes. But they have weathered that storm, and their basketball program has really climbed and climbed and climbed. And I want to say they have gotten an invitation to the big dance 2 of the last 3 years. So they have gone from nobody even knowing who the heck they are to their basketball program getting an invite to the big dance, which again that's a big deal, kind of like what their big deal is going to the Mountain West. So here's my question, and I think this is an interesting question. I'm not sure how much either one of you really have experience-wise with college, but do you think this move sets up Grand Canyon University to start a football program? I mean, they've already got a nationally ranked basketball. Do you think they're going to maybe try to start a football program going to the Mountain West? Sirhan, go ahead, bud.
I'm going to give you a bit of a personal experience here to answer this question. My alma mater, Thomas More College, it was a Division III school, had a stellar basketball program for the longest time. As you said, as they expanded, they started now putting a football product over here. Northern Kentucky University is another one that's trending the same way. I wouldn't be, I think it would be a good thing for you guys if you guys can get a football program over there, especially in that conference when they have a lot of solid programs. I think it's very, very doable, and I wouldn't be against it. As I seem to hear firsthand with Thomas More University, my alma mater, doing the exact same thing as a Division III school. I think it would be a wonderful thing.
Okay, Mitch, I'm going to same question. Do you think that this might set them up to be able to add a football program at GC?
Yeah, I think I'm in agreement. I think it definitely, at least raises the question for them. I'm sure internally they're really thinking about it and talking about it. That AD is probably trying to pull some strings right now, especially as you mentioned earlier, Mike. That Pac-12 is still one short school for football. I don't know how quickly you can put those programs together, but I mean, I'm sure they're eyeing that spot, hoping maybe they could fill that if not in this year or the next, but in a few years. So yeah, I definitely think with the success of that basketball program, that just brings so much money into your school, even being invited to March, that they can kind of move some of that around, and that athletic department definitely could make the case that they could support a good football program too.
Okay, I agree. I really do. I think they're at least going to explore it. How about that? That's kind of where we'll leave it. They're in the Mountain West, and I wonder if they haven't had some secret conversations behind closed doors kind of thing. Hey, we'll bring you to the Mountain West. We really like what your basketball program brings to us, and we'd like to see you kind of look into possibly doing a football program for us. And we'll see how that all works out. Excuse me. We're going to jump to the Arizona Cardinals. The Arizona Cardinals are 5-4 and in sole possession of first place in the NFC West. I never thought I would say that this season at any point or time. Right? They are 25th in passing. They're 7th in rushing, and they're 12th in total yards. Those aren't half bad stats for Arizona. I really thought they would be higher in the passing department with Kyler Murray and the newest Ohio State recruit. We'll connect all the dots here, right? Marvin Harrison. They're 25th again in passing. They're 7th in rushing. They're 12th in total yards. They've won 3 of their last 4. Excuse me, they've won 3 in a row and 4 of their last 5. Their schedule here is, so they play the Jets this Sunday, then they have a bye. They play Seattle, Minnesota, Seattle again, New England, Carolina, the Rams, and the Niners. They traded for an outside linebacker, Baron Browning from Denver. They only gave up a 6th-round pick, and they're going to only have to pay $1.558 million for his services for the rest of the year. So, what does this trade do for this team? What does the trade itself? Not looking at anything else, but I just rattled up a whole bunch of stats, and then I realized that I was going to condense it back down. I almost didn't ask the question this way. I was like, "Wow, who wrote this script for this show?" And then I realized it was me. So Mitch, what does the trade itself do for the Arizona Cardinals?
I don't think it's a big needle mover for the Cardinals, but I do think it really shows that they're invested in this team and showing that we are 5-4. We're leading the NFC West. Sure, they're getting a lot of help from the rest of the division, but it shows that at least they're ready to compete, and maybe not this year, but they're ready to build on this year at the very least, and start competing for that NFC West in the future. I'm in agreement with you. I thought their passing game would be a lot better with Marvin Harrison Jr. He's definitely gotten a lot of attention, so it's not from lack of trying. These defenses are definitely honing in on him, and you can see that just based on the passing game that they do have. It's really all over the place with Greg Dortch and Michael Wilson. I think it's a good sign for them. They didn't expect to be here, definitely. I don't think it's a huge move on defense, but I think they definitely needed another piece on defense, because right now it's pretty much Buda Baker out there. Buda Baker out there by himself.
What's his name again? What?
Yeah, I'm not trying to. But yeah, no, it's a good move, and it really, more than anything, helps that locker room show that the front office has some belief in them.
All right, so Sirhan, do you agree with Mitch? And it's not necessarily what the person brings to the team; it's more what the mentality of the team is now. The front office has said, "Hey, we want to help you. We believe in this team, and here we added the piece to you." Is that what it is more than anything else?
I think so. When I had my preview show, when I started my live stream, I had them pegged as a surprise team that could go 8-9 and 9-8 ish around that mark. I said when you guys hired Jonathan Gann a couple of years ago, because even though they didn't win many games last year, I noticed a trend and a bit of a culture shift to where even though they were losing games, they were competitive. This season, they took it up to another level. I actually like this trade because I think it's a depth piece you need on the defensive front, because, as Mitch said, it's Buda Baker and nobody else. I'm sort of not surprised at the passing numbers, because for the reason you said, everything is focused on Harrison Jr. and basically I don't know who their second option is at the moment. They probably might need to find a number 2 wide receiver in the offseason to take pressure off of Harrison Jr. And the biggest thing, of course, is you have a 100% healthy Kyler Murray, who's part of this. And I said all along, I thought they would at least be in the running for an NFC playoff spot. Didn't think they would be in the running for the NFC West crown. I'll tell you this: they did beat San Francisco and the Rams, two division wins, and they still got to play Seattle. That gives them a real shot, I think, to probably steal the division from the other 3, which there's a lot of question marks in that division right now.
All right, so I'm glad you set me up so well, sir. I appreciate that. I'll stick with you. So how do you expect the season to end for the Arizona Cardinals? Let me give you 4 choices, right? I'll give Mitch a minute to mull these over in that little young head of his. Sirhan, I'll put you on the spot here. How do you expect the season to end for the Cardinals? Will they win the NFC West? Will they be a wild card team? Will they just simply be above 500 without a playoff berth, or will they end up below 500? Let me give you the 4 again, all right? Will they win the NFC West? Will they become a wild card team and make the playoffs? Will they be above 500 but no playoff berth, or will they finish below 500? Which of those 4 are you going to take, Sirhan?
I would love to come out here and say they will win the West, because they're just a real feel-good story right now over there in Arizona, because it basically would back my point. I said all along that they would be one of the surprise teams.
Well, anytime
because
you can
NFC, right. But because the NFC North is probably going to send 2 or 3 teams in the playoffs, I think they're going to have a above 500 team that misses the playoffs. I think they're going to be in that 8, 9, 9, and 8 range. I think the lack of you talk about 25th of passing, at some point I think is going to get to them. It's going to eventually catch up with them.
Okay, so Mitch, what do you think? So Sirhan has taken they will finish above 500, but they won't make the playoffs. Is that what you're going to take? Or are you going to take
Yeah,
something
I'm in that same spot, and I think for the exact same reasons, the NFC North is probably going to send 3 teams at the very least to the postseason, and it's going to be really hard to pass those guys with the records that they have there. I think, beating the 49ers by a point and that game is huge for them. It's really when the 49ers were not playing well, and I don't expect them to continue that the rest of the season. I think they'll probably end up winning the NFC West, once they figure everything out, and especially if they can get a healthy McCaffrey back. There's still enough time in the season that they can turn things around. So I don't think the Cardinals will hold off on that yet. I do think they'll struggle and teams will kind of figure them out. But I think the NFC is just too good for the Cardinals to sneak in there. But I do think they'll be at or above 500 without a doubt.
All right, so Sirhan, take a break, stretch for a second. We'll talk to the money bags down here about the gambling aspect of this. But I'm just going to ask you to kind of shake your head, right? So then what both of you are saying here is that if they don't win the division, they're not getting into the playoffs, right?
No,
Okay.
I agree.
All right. Got all that part put together. So on the gambling side here, which is Mitch Middlebrooks' specialty here, what are the odds of the Cardinals winning the division, and where are they at as far as we're really stretched it out and say they can fly? Ooh, good bird. They can fly all the way to the Super Bowl. What do you got for us, Mitch?
Yeah, let me get back to it here. The Bengals kind of threw me off a little bit, but let me pull it back up. I kind of got lost here in the sauce.
So we are going to do this. This is our all Arizona thing. Let me cover up for Mitch here a second, because he doesn't know how to multitask, but that's okay. So we're gonna do the all Arizona. We've already talked about TCU and basketball. We are on our last question here for Arizona Cardinals. We're going to jump to the Phoenix Suns, and then we're actually going to jump back again to college football because ASU is doing surprisingly well, and I want to talk about them and their success. So we're looking at the gambling odds right at the moment. Mitch is getting those together for us. We're going to ask 2 questions when it comes to the Arizona Cardinals and the gambling aspect. The first one is, what are the odds of them winning the division? And then we're going to ask Mitch, would you actually put some money down on that? And then the second thing that we're going to ask is, I'm sure these odds are going to be like really, really far out there, and would be put even $5 or $10 on the fact that the Arizona Cardinals may go to the Super Bowl. Mitch, what you got for us, buddy? How about the division first?
We'll do it how we did the Bengals and close out the Arizona segment with the gambling. How about that?
Okay, that'll be all right. It's your show, buddy. You go right ahead.
Well, do you want to hop in? Well, hold on. I got it up here. So to win the division, they're at plus 170 actually, which is nowhere near the odds I would like from them. I know they're leading the division right now, but I really don't see that continuing.
Okay, so Vegas doesn't believe in them.
No, yeah, the Rams starting to play better as of late, and the 49ers still yet to play their best football this season. I don't like the plus 170. That's just not enough. Not a high enough odd for me. I mean, if you're a real gambler or a real risk taker, I think to win the Super Bowl at plus 5,000, that's maybe a better bet. But I still think that's just too low for where the Cardinals are right now. I think you wait a few weeks and the NFC West kind of does what we think it will. Those odds will be even better, and if you believe in them now, you probably believe in them then, so you can get some more money and better value out of them then.
You know what? That's a great take by you. That's a great play, which is, hey, give it a few weeks, right? They are probably not going to lead the division forever. They're going to come down to earth a little bit. Some of those other teams in that division are probably going to come back up. So it'll kind of even out, if nothing else, and then the odds will get better, and that's when you put money on it, right?
Yep.
Okay. Let's jump into the Phoenix Suns. The Suns are 6. Actually, I think they're 7. 7-1 now. I can't remember if I included the game yesterday in this total or not. But they've only got 1 loss. How about that? I know that. So I think they're 6-1, tied with the Golden State Warriors in the Pacific Division. But they only have a 3.7 point differential. They're plus 3.7 in those wins. They're 11th in field goal percentage. They're 7th in 3-point percentage, and they're 13th in total rebounds and 12th in total points. Mitch, are you surprised by their start? Let's go there. Start there. Are you surprised by their start?
No, I think, this is what they expected the Suns to be when they put this team together. I think they're finally playing how they wanted them to last season and just didn't have the time to really mesh the way they should. So no, I'm not surprised at this at all. The way this roster is constructed, this is where they should be. It's still early and they'll probably return to, where we think they are 6-1. Obviously, they're not going to keep that winning percentage up, but they played really well to start this season. Booker and Kevin Durant have both had really good starts this season. So yeah, I'm not surprised.
All right, so Sirhan, I'm going to jump to another question for you here, and I'm going to ask you this, buddy. I don't know how big of an NBA fan that you are. We're also going to get into the gambling odds here with the Suns. I'm going to put that question up on the screen so everybody can see it. We'll get to that here in just a second after I'm done talking to Sirhan here. Buddy, can it continue? Can the Suns keep up this particular winning percentage? Mitch kind of mentioned it. They're in a really tough Western Conference. Can they keep this start up?
Not only in a tough Western Conference, they're in a tough Pacific Division with Golden State and the Lakers in Sacramento. It's possible. It's possible when you have standouts the caliber of Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. But only a 3.7 point differential is a bit of an eyebrow raiser. You would think it'd be more substantial than that. One thing I do like is the 3-point percentage ranking and their rebound ranking, which has been a bit of I remember when that's how they lost at Denver a couple of seasons ago in the playoffs. I like those rankings for them. I don't know if it'll continue quite like this. I still think they could be a top 4 seed in the West, but it's because they're in the same division as Golden State and the Lakers, and you still have a Dallas and Denver amongst many others out there. It's going to be sort of tough for them to maintain the top spot just because of how top heavy the West can be.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I mean, you're right. Not only are they in a tough conference, they're in a tough division in that tough conference. So the West is no joke. You look at all those teams in the West, and there's no cupcake. I was listening to Bloom and Kempton last night on 98. Hang on, started to say it too fast. 98.7. There we go. The local FM station out here, and they were saying the same thing. They're like, there are no gimmies here. And even I will say this though, even though Booker had a bad night last night, if you look at his numbers, he was not on last night at all. He was 7-7 for the foul line, but shooting wise, he didn't have it. Yet they still tweaked out a win. And I think that's one of the things that the Suns can do. Bradley Beal can take over if Booker's not doing great and if Durant's not doing great. If you watch that game, Durant took that game over at the end, basically said, you know what, I'm going to throw the rest of you boys on my back and let's go. He scored 35 points for him and almost willed them to victory single-handedly by himself. So now that we know that, I know it's really early in the season. They're only 7 games in. But, Mitch, I got to get this to you because I'm sure we're going to talk about this more than once during this campaign of the NBA season. What are the odds of the Sun winning the West in the National Basketball Association?
Yeah, so I think they're in a really similar spot to the Cardinals, where now is probably not the best time to jump on that bandwagon, at least for as far as the gambling perspective goes, because of the hot start they've had. I completely agree with Sirhan. I think it's interesting to see that point differential, especially in their last game. Playing the 76ers and beating them by 2 when they don't have Joel Embiid or Paul George out on the court. Not great. So their record is 6-1, but they still have a lot of things to work out on that roster. So they're plus 115 to win the Pacific Division right now. That's nowhere near the odds you want for an 80-game season like they have in the NBA. So it's still too early there. To win the West itself, they're at plus 850. So if you're a real believer in the Suns, that could be a place you jump in right now. And then speaking way in the future, if you think they're going to go and win it all, they're plus 1,700 for that. So the farther you think they'll go, the better odds you're going to get. But right now, I think you stay away from winning the Pacific Division. Just too many unknowns with the Warriors and the Lakers in there that could really tighten things up.
All right, so let me give everybody out there a preview of what we're going to do here as soon as we're done with all Arizona. We did all Ohio. We're getting ready to wrap up all Arizona. We're going to look at what's the best conference in college football. We're going to find out what you guys thought about what the NBA's punishment for Joel Embiid was. And we got 13 players that have received the qualifying offer. I know this isn't in your notes, and that's one of the reasons why I'm saying we're previewing this right now to give you a chance to jump ahead and take a stare and take a look. If that's what you guys want to do here. So there are all those players that got the qualifying offer. I'm going to ask you one of them. Give me one. Tell me where they're going to go. I'll let you pick whichever player you want to pick, and tell me where you think that player is going to end up before the beginning of next season. All right, so that's where we are, and then we're going to wrap everything up at the end with why the Brewers should and how they can sign Willie Adames. That's how we'll end today's broadcast. But we are right now with the Phoenix Suns. We're talking about the gambling odds. Mitch gave those to us. So we're going to jump to the Arizona State University Sun Devils. Let me give you their stats. And Sirhan, I'll have the first question for you. It'll actually be question 2 on your notes. I'm going to skip the first one. We're going to do it at the end, all right? So ASU Sun Devils, they are 6-2. They lost to Texas Tech, and they lost in Cincinnati. And we're having this big connection back and forth between the Ohio and the Arizona stuff, right? We're able to do it all kinds of things here. So they actually lost in Cincinnati. But when they lost in Cincinnati, they had their backup quarterback in. So I'm not sure, it's not like they got trampled or anything, but they had their backup quarterback in. So they are at versus UCF here in Arizona on Saturday. They're actually going to be on ESPN2. They are 142nd in passing. They are 28th in rushing. They are 28th in rushing in the entire college football landscape. Pretty good number. And they're 73rd in total yards. So, Sirhan, here's your question, buddy. They got 4 games left. Here are the 4 games they have left. UCF this Saturday. They've got number 22 Kansas State next. They've got number 9 BYU after that. 2 big heavy hitters. And then they finish out with Arizona in the in-state rivalry. Here's the question, looking at those 4 games. Can they get a signature win over either Kansas State or BYU? What do you think, sir?
I like their chances against Kansas State. I don't know much about BYU, but I like their chances against Kansas State. I saw the game against Cincinnati, and even though they lost, I thought they acquitted themselves rather solidly. Yeah, I like the team that they have over. You guys have over there. Oh, you said no starter quarterback, which was part of the main reason why Cincinnati won. But I like your chances against Kansas State because even though they're number 2, Kansas is a bit, inconsistent with their play. I don't know much about BYU. I think you can get the win over Arizona, your rival. But I think the Kansas State one might be your signature win that probably, hopefully, makes you, if you want to call this, bowl eligible. And I really like your chances in that one.
Right, they're already bowl eligible, which is fantastic. They got 6 wins, and like you're saying, if you can get that, this is where I think their next step is, right? If they can get that signature win, Mitch down there shaking his head at me. I think he agrees with me, right? If you can get that signature win over one of those 2 teams that are ranked in the top 25, then that should hold you to the top 25. And we'll talk about what bowl games they can get into in a moment. Mitch, here's my question for you: can they beat UCF on Saturday, even if they don't have their superstar running back Cam Scatterboot? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think they can. UCF is kind of also wishy-washy this season. If they go out there and play as Arizona was a few weeks ago, and I know they lost against Cincinnati, but that was still a good game. I think they can. Scaraboo is a huge part of that team, and not only on the field, but a huge part of the locker room. So it is a big loss, but I do think they can still beat UCF this weekend. I'm in complete agreement. I do think Kansas State would be that signature win for them, and it'd be nice to see them get that. I don't think they're going to beat BYU, but I think, getting that Kansas State win means a lot more than just, like you said, they're already bowl eligible, but there's bowls and then there's bowls that you actually want to play in. Beating Kansas State is going to keep you out of those like Beanie Baby bowl games. The
I
ones
like
that
that
nobody
term.
knows
I'm
about.
gonna use that. I'm gonna use
Yeah,
that. Baby bowl games. I like that.
and yeah, so yeah, I think that puts them where they want to be in an actual like competitive and fun to watch bowl game instead of just sneaking in and you get the guaranteed Mayo bowl game or whatever it is. Those kind of Beanie Baby bowl games.
I think you should trademark that, buddy. I do. I like that. Beanie Baby bowl games. I can hear ESPN using that on every one of them. And there's, man, like you're saying, there's like 50 or 60 bowl games now. So that could be used a lot. You get a buck off each one of them, man. You might have something here. So we're talking about the bowl games, right? So the Alamo Bowl, if they get their signature win, they can probably go to the Alamo Bowl. And you're like, it's the Alamo Bowl, right? But it's actually a pretty good bowl. And I'll tell you why it's a pretty darn good bowl. It'll pay Arizona State $8.2 million. That's why it's a pretty good bowl, right? $8.2 million for a team, basically getting them the $8.2 million on a team that I mean, come on now. We weren't even sure if they were going to be 500, and here they are, bowl eligible already, and everything else. That's the ceiling, right? The Alamo Bowl is kind of the ceiling for them. The Holiday Bowl is the one that's kind of in the middle, right? The Holiday Bowl will pay you $6.5 million, so that's kind of your middle spot, and then your Sun Bowl will pay you $4.5 million. So if you can get that one signature win and get yourself up to the upper echelon of the bowl, I mean, you can get $4 more million. I don't know about you, but I'd do a heck of a lot for $4 million. And I'm sure that Arizona State and their football program feels the same way. So hopefully they can do that. My last question, I'm going to pose it to both of you here. I'm going to put this up on the screen, and it's a pretty simple question, but I think it's a good question to ask. Is ASU getting enough? Well, it shouldn't have two in there. It should say, is ASU getting enough respect nationally? I don't know. Somebody can't type. So what do you think, Sirhan? Is ASU getting enough? Now that you're done running around there like a crazy man, and we were watching you, and the flannel was just flying back there. So we'll set back up again, buddy. What do you think? Is ASU getting enough respect nationally?
Yeah, my battery just suddenly decreased. I had to take a time out.
Yeah, we've all been there. Don't worry about it.
My apologies, but I think they're getting there. If you're competitive, you're getting big wins, you're going to get there. If they can beat Kansas State, as the three of us mentioned, I think they're going to start to get it. They're getting there they're going to get there at some point, as long as they keep trending upward and keep winning the big games. I think it's going to come down to that game against Kansas State. If they can miraculously beat BYU, it'll open some eyes. I'm like you, Mitch. I'm not expecting it, but if they can beat Kansas State, it'll start to trend in that direction.
Yeah, I agree. That's really what's going to give them that national respect. I think right now, they're still a team that, they probably internally are motivated by that. Well, nobody's talking about us on national media like they should. I don't really know if they should be. I think Arizona State's kind of in that middle ground of like they're not underrated, they're not overrated. Sure, they've had a lot better season than anyone thought, but they also gave themselves a pretty easy schedule most of the season. Obviously, they're going to play Arizona, and luckily when they did, or when they are going to, it looks like they'll be in a good spot to beat them. But they definitely didn't do any favors for themselves with the schedule this season, just kind of playing, those middle of the pack teams. So I wouldn't say they're underrated or disrespected by the media. But if they keep winning, and if they can sneak out one, if not both of those games against Kansas State and BYU, they're definitely going to be getting talked about a lot more.
And so what if they just are respectable in both those games? What if it's 7 points or less? Does that change the narrative at all, or do you think they have to win one of the two?
I don't think it moves it too much. I mean, I think that nobody's disrespecting them in the media, because they do, they know where this team is at, and they know they're ahead of where they wanted to be this season. But I don't think anybody is really expecting them to win those games. But if they can shock the world, they'll definitely get that respect.
All right, so we got one more segment here. We're going to put some different music on in the background. Yeah, it's bagpipes. Yes, it is. But we're going to see how this all goes here. So we're going to do a couple of like 2-minute takes. All right. We're going to try to stick to a 2-minute schedule on each one of these questions here. We're going to do a college. We're going to do a college football one. We're going to do an NBA one, and then we're going to get into MLB. And like I said, we're going to talk about the Milwaukee Brewers to close everything out. Mitch's Milwaukee Brewers to close everything out. All right. All right. So here we go. Let's do what's the best conference in college football, right? And before everybody starts saying, what they think it's going to be, let me give you some stats first, okay? The SEC teams, they have 8 teams in the top 25 right now. They're ranked numbers 2, 5, 7, 11, 14, 15, 16, and 24. Then you have the ACC.
Well, we might be losing him.
Froze up. I got the questions. I still think it's the SEC. Although I think the gap is closing. You can tell, especially when we talk about the expansion of the Big Ten. ACC's gotten some solid teams now. It's still the SEC until further notice, because at least a half dozen there could probably win the whole thing.
Yeah, I completely agree. I do think it's the SEC, and that's no surprise. I mean, we expected it. The fact that we're even having this conversation about, what is the best conference in college football, I think sheds a lot of eyes on the transfer portal and the realignment of the conferences. Before, 2-3 years ago, we're not even having this conversation. SEC is clearly ahead above the rest of the conferences in college football. But I mean, Big Ten, those 4 teams in the top 10, that's nothing to bat your eyes at. That's really impressive for them. And it shows that, the moves that they made has really helped those teams and helped the Big Ten in general. But yeah, the ACC is nothing to shy away from either. Those 5 teams there. Only 1 team in the top 10, but still some really solid teams there.
I still think it's sizable for the SEC, but not as sizable as it was a couple of years ago because of what you said, the portal, because the conferences have started to slow down the gap a little bit. But I still say if I had to pick of all this bunch, I'd probably say my top couple favorites would probably be from the SEC to basically win the whole thing. I know Texas sort of lost to Georgia. I still would probably put them in the mix. I still think Georgia's going to find a way to get themselves together, especially Carson Beck, who's just been hot and cold at times. I mean, he looked abysmal in that game against Alabama. I was watching that first half. He was just terrible. But even then, I still think SEC is the premier conference, but the gap is starting to close little by little at a time for the reasons we said.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think, the champion, if I'm betting on a champion of college football, what conference they're coming from, it's going to be the SEC still, because I completely agree. I think there's 3 or 4 teams there that could easily end up being the champion. I really think that, if it's not Oregon or Ohio State, I really don't see anybody from the Big Ten winning it all. But it's SEC is still the best, but that gap is closing. So that's good to see. It's good for college football in general. So
it is. I agree.
Mike, I don't know if we got you back yet, so I'm going to start on the NBA and talking about Joel Embiid. Joel Embiid got suspended 3 games today for pushing a media member on Saturday. I'll just go into it. So the question is, what should the NBA do to Joel Embiid? We know what they did. They suspended him 3 games today. I really don't see this punishment as a fit to, what he did. Joel Embiid's a guy that doesn't want to play back-to-back days. He doesn't really want to go out there and play anyways. Honestly, I think a bigger punishment would be making him play 3 games in a row and back-to-back days. Then out even more. I mean, he hasn't played yet this season. He's fine rehabbing. So it's really not much of a suspension, if at all, because he's just going to sit out those games happily anyways. I didn't see the video of I guess there's a video out there. I didn't see it, but it sounds like the media was kind of going at him and making some comments about his mother. I'm not exactly sure what happened, but yeah, it sounded pretty messy.
From my understanding, I believe an article was written by somebody who works for the Philadelphia Inquirer who took shots at his family. I understand it from Joel Embiid's perspective. I've always said one thing you don't cross is a man's family. That's what I said in my show. I understand his perspective of it. It's a tough line because when these people put pen to paper on these newspapers, they have a tendency to slip words out they really shouldn't, and that's where I think maybe a sort of a line is crossed. I understand it from that perspective. I think the one thing we need to be careful with, because we saw this, of course, with Jason Kelsey Saturday with that fan. We're getting to some very, very dangerous times, and my fear is a trend might be set almost, just simply because we're going to get this, from media members, from hecklers, et cetera, et cetera. We're going to have this more often. I get why the NBA was suspended him. I think it was the right thing because I think certain things you can't cross, but I think people need to be real careful with this. We consider some words that can provoke somebody for such a thing. I mean, I like what you said about the Joel Embiid making him play the games because Joel Embiid doesn't like playing, consecutive games, But in terms of the actual incident, people need to start to be real careful here because we've seen it over the weekend with Jason Kelsey and now this. We're getting to very dangerous times.
Yep, agreed.
All right. I apologize for going away here for a second. You guys carried the show, man. And you know what? Hang on. Let me. Yeah. And I see, Sirhan's probably got the gun underneath his desk there, and he's just going to shoot me with it. So why not? We'll just do all the sound effects at once. Right? So hey, I apologize. I'm not sure what's going on this end over here with me, but thank you guys for carrying the show. Yeah. So the Embiid thing, I'm gonna, I could hear you guys, but I left myself off of the stage on purpose until everything kind of caught back up, and I was listening to the two of you doing a fantastic job, by the way. Yeah, the Joel Embiid thing, Sirhan was right and Mitch was right both. So I'm going to kind of smash them together here. There was a guy for a local newspaper who wrote a story about him and his family, basically saying he took too much time off when his wife gave birth, and saying that he also took too much time off when his brother passed away. And, pretty much saying that in order for you to help the team and affect the team in a positive way, you actually have to play. And Embiid took offense to that, saying, hey, man, it's my family, and I can take time off whenever I want and stuff like that. So that's where that all kind of started. And then, here in Phoenix, Mitch probably knows because, we've seen it in the papers and stuff here on the radio and on television here. But we've also got kind of a feud between Kevin Durant and Stephen A. Smith kind of going back and forth. So my follow-up question to this was, how does the NBA approve the player and media relationship? I mean, doesn't the NBA kind of have to see, some of these things that are happening? And should we restrict locker rooms? Should we, only make people available for interview times at a certain point? Or, you can't talk to them unless they come to the podium? Or, Sirhan, I'll start with you. You're our guest here. First of all, appreciate you staying on board with us and everything else there, even though you had the battery issues and we're having some kind of technical difficulties here, but we are fighting through and sticking with each other. So what do you think about the NBA trying to improve the relationship between the media and its players?
So it's very, very tricky because, some things, I know some things both ways can be said, can be taken so far out of context. And we're not talking about NBA, we're talking about, all sports because it can happen across the board. Okay. It's into some really, really tricky times just simply because some things are said, they're taken the wrong way. It's very, very sensitive with everything out in the open now with, the technology the way it is. I don't know where to go with this. I understand, as I told Mitch, I 100% understand Joel Embiid's view, and I certainly would act like him in that situation. The thing is, I don't know where he would go with this. I mean, I understand why the NBA did it. I mean, you want to conduct yourselves as professionals, but when you cross lines like this, you start to touch some real slippery areas. it's a hard question I'm sorry if I'm taking too much time, but it's a sort of hard question for me or maybe anyone to answer because nobody has a real conclusive answer to this. A lot of people are saying, Joel Embiid sure just walked away from the situation. You're talking about a guy who was, spending time with his family, especially when we consider some of the international backgrounds of some of these guys who are mainly family first. That's where it gets real tricky. Personal knowledge. And one more thing I will add before we pass it on. You talk about the feud between Kevin Durant and Stephen A. Smith. It's been ongoing for years. I mean, it started way back when Kevin Durant jumped from Oklahoma City to Golden State, and Stephen A. Put him on blast, and they've been going at it ever since. It's not the first time with those two.
Right, they just help each other out in their ratings and stuff, right? That's pretty much all they're doing right at the moment.
Right.
I understand, Mitch. I'm going to ask you the same thing as far as how can we improve the relationship between the players and the media. And I'll throw this out there. Joel Embiid can't touch the reporter, right? You just can't go that far. I mean, even in WWE, right? Even in that sport, when they grab the referee or whatever in the middle of their match, they're going to get fined or they're going to get something for that. So the NBA had to do something, right, Mitch?
Yeah, I agree. They definitely had to do something. I think it's really hard to repair that relationship, especially because the way that media is right now, outrage and like clickbait is so huge, and that's how they're driving their engagement. That's how they're getting, money and paying and getting ads to sponsor them. It's this clickbait and engagement, and just kind of outrage that they have to drive. So it's really hard to say, well, the media just has to stop doing that when that's what's paying their bills and paying these reporters. So if you want your story to get clicked on, you got to do something like that. I think they both cross the line. I think, going after somebody's family like that and somebody's personal life is over the line. And obviously, putting your hands on somebody is also over the line. But I completely understand the frustration on Embiid's side. I think it's just kind of the state of media right now, and I completely agree. It is really dangerous for both sides, because not only is Joel Embiid mad at the media, but all of his super fans that love him and sleep with his posters above their bed, they instantly hate that media guy now too. So it is really it's at a really weird point where we have to be really careful about what we're doing, because we don't want to put anybody in an unsafe environment just for sports.
All right. Sirhan over here is doing the finger thing again. So go ahead, buddy. What you got?
After what happened with Jason Kelsey on Saturday and this, it's going to get real testy. Don't be surprised if we see more and more of this with media, not just media, but also fan interaction with athletes, because it's starting to get, and I talked about a while you were down. It's going to get real testy, and it's going to get real dangerous. Everything's out in the open right now, and people are going to have some crazy reactions to what they see and read.
Yeah, right. And I'm going to tell you too, as we wrap this part of it up, we're gonna jump to. I've got one more little NBA nugget that I want to throw out there, but I do want to say that www.welikesportspc.com is not gonna stoop to this level. We don't need clicks that bad, right? I would much rather.
I agree.
Mitch, what are you smiling so big for down there? That's the biggest I've seen you smile in the entire show, buddy. But we don't need that. I want to be the site that gives you real sports interaction, just like we're doing right here. There's no need for us to say stupid things. And like, if you notice, this show very rarely has any cussing on it or anything else like that. We try to our very best to keep it a family type show. And when I bring on our guests like Sirhan and everyone else, they adhere to those codes for us. And we want to be an upstanding site and an upstanding podcast and all of that. So with that being said, one last NBA note that I want to give to you. We want to wish, I know all three of us do, and everyone here at www.welikesportspc.com wants to wish Greg Popovich a speedy recovery. They're kind of keeping it quiet as to exactly what the quote-unquote health condition is that he's going through right at the moment, but he's not going to be teaching or not going to be coaching the team, and he's not going to have a prominent role. But whatever he's going through, we certainly wish him a speedy recovery. All right, let's jump into one last thing. Mitch, I wanted to get your take on this because what you said last week was true. You were right, and I was wrong. Oh my gosh, that kind of hurts me to say, but I guess,
Awesome.
yeah, I guess you're awesome, buddy. So I'll give you your prop for your prop is due here. Nathan Shepard, the guy who grabbed a hold of Justin Herbert's ankle last week, and we showed the video and all that. He ended up getting fined a couple days ago. That's all that happened to him. He was fined $11,817.00. That was it. No suspension, no nothing. Mitch, just like you said he'll be fine, but he won't get anything else. And I was on that bandwagon to note, suspend him. We need to teach these guys a lesson. They decided not to. So, Mitch, I know we know your opinion on it. Sirhan, I want to get yours real fast. What do you think about Nathan Shepard just being fined and nothing else happening?
I saw the play. That should be a suspendable offense. I know it sounds extreme, but it is. I mean, it was blatantly trying to take the guy's leg out. Let's start with that. Second part, the best part I think the NFL did was not fine the offensive lineman that went after him. That was the best thing they did. Because that's what you're supposed to do, defend your teammate. That was a blunt, dirty play trying to take a guy's leg out. The fact he only got fined, basically the equivalent of pocket change for him, is basically a disgrace. That should have been a fine of significance or a one-game suspension. That was just a blatant attempt to basically injure a guy's leg.
All right, so we're going to jump into MLB. We're going to try to end this here. We got about 10 minutes or so to wrap up all this stuff. Here are the 13 MLB players who received the qualifying offer. All right, so the Yankees gave it to Juan Soto. The Mets gave it to three different players, Pete Alonso, Sean Manaea, and Luis Severino. Baltimore gave it to Corbin Burns and Anthony Santander. So this qualifying offer is $21.2, I believe, million for 1 year if they accept it. Houston gave it to Alex Bregman. The Dodgers gave it to Oscar Hernandez. Boston gave it to Nick Pivetta, which I don't know about you, Mitch. That's my biggest surprise off this list. The Diamondbacks gave it to Christian Walker. The Reds gave it to Nick Martinez. The Braves gave it to Max Fried. And the Brewers gave it to Willie Adames. We'll touch on that here in a couple of moments. So, Sirhan, you're the guest. I'm going to go back up to you with this MLB stuff. Give me one of these guys, either Soto, Alonso, Manaea, Severino, Burns, Santander, Bregman, Hernandez, Pivetta, Walker, Martinez, Fried, or Adames. Whew, rattled all them off. Didn't mess up any of them. Give me one of those guys and tell me where he's going to end up by the time baseball kicks back off again after spring training next year.
Well, that's a good one. Good list here. I'm reading this as you go along. I'm going to throw a wild one on here. I think Corbin Burns goes to the Yankees because they need another arm bad after Garrett Cole. That was a bad drop off for them. They also need some bullpen help, obviously, but I think another arm is something they desperately need. So I'm going to throw a wild one out there. I think Corbin Burns goes to the Yankees.
All right, Corbin Burns to the Yankees is what Mr. Day is saying. Mr. Middlebrook, what are you going to say, buddy? Pick one of these guys and tell me where they're going to be at before the beginning of next year.
I really like that. I was on that as well. So I'll take another one that I think I do want to touch on. Alex Bregman was actually the most surprising one of this for me. I did not think Houston was going to offer that. It doesn't really make sense to me. They didn't want to have any contract negotiation with him for a long-term deal or even the 3-year deal that he was hoping for. So pretty surprising for me that they did extend the qualifying offer for him. But I'm actually going to say Christian Walker is going to go elsewhere. I think Christian Walker is either going to end up a Seattle Mariner or a St. Louis Cardinal. Paul Goldschmidt's time is more than likely done in St. Louis, and I think they're going to poach another one of the Diamondbacks' first basemen and grab Christian Walker.
Okay. Now, I think that St. Louis is going to have a sell-off before it's all said and done. I think you're going to start seeing that pop up in the winter meetings from everything that I'm being told. The insiders, I don't have a whole lot of insiders in sports, but I do have a few in baseball. They're pretty much telling me that, we talked about it earlier, Jonathan India is probably going to get traded to the Giants. Don't be surprised when that happens. You heard it here first. And then I do believe that could be a very big possibility with the Cardinals selling off everything, and then they just go out and grab Christian Walker off of the market. Here's mine, and it's going to make Mitch really, really upset. and it's not just because I'm segueing into the next thing. I've thought this the entire time. The Dodgers have one offensive hole, and that is that shortstop. And the Dodgers have an unmatched money capability to do so. We're also going to talk next week. I'm going to tease this one, and we'll wait until next week to talk about it. What if the Dodgers signed Shohei Ohtani this offseason and they turn around and sign Juan Soto to another big $700 million contract next season? And the question that Mitch and I are going to discuss, and maybe with someone else as well, is should MLB do anything about that? Should they put a stop to a team having two $700 million players on the same team? We'll talk about that next week. But right at the moment, I think that the LA Dodgers are going to sign Willy Adames, and they're going to give him a good chunk of money and put him there at shortstop and fill that hole for them. So that's where I'm going right at the moment. Mitch, I want to, this is more directed towards you. Sirhan, we certainly appreciate you hanging out with us, buddy. Love the gator in the background and all that. We're good to go, man. That's giving us some real Ohio vibes out there, man. What's the weather like in Ohio right now? Where is is the garage door open?
No, it's close. It's mid 60s, windy with some rain.
Okay, so honestly, the weather there and the weather here is not too far apart from each other, with the exception of the rain.
Mm-mm.
So, yeah. So American Family Field, Mitch, it holds 41,900 people. They did 3 playoff games. All right. I looked it up. The average ticket price for American Family Field for those 3 playoff games was $250. And before you're like, oh my gosh, really? Well, you got to remember too, you're averaging everything. So you're looking at the high end with the suite and the lower end of the actual players, or not players, but the lower end people like you and I and Sirhan here, Sirhan, who can actually afford to go to these games, right? So $250 is the average. Okay, if you take $250, you times it by $41,900, you get $10,475,000. So they did that 3 times. They sold that place out 3 times. So they made over $30 million just in what I will call the windfall from going to the playoffs. Now you're going to tell me they can't afford to sign Willy Adames? You made $30 million off of 3 games. Give me a break. Stop crying. Stop saying, "Oh, we're a low end team. We got to give Corbin Burns away, and now we're going to give Willy Adames away, and now we're going to stop. Sign somebody." Sign somebody and make it Willy Adames. Mitch, what do you think about that? Sign somebody and make it Willy Adames.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it's not because they can't afford him. It's because if they do give him what he wants, they're not going to sign anybody else because they're just worried about spending. It's not the ability to, it's the willingness to. And that's what's going to be the saddest part about seeing him in Dodger blue next year, because I do agree with you. I do think the Dodgers are going to go out and get Willy Adames and just give him whatever he wants, because that is the one piece they were missing, and they're definitely going to want to repeat next year. But yeah, I mean, I'm in agreement with you. I think a lot of Brewers fans are trying to put the pressure on the front office to sign Willy, and rightfully so, because playing poor me as a Major League Baseball owner is just kind of getting old. I mean, these guys. If you don't want to spend money on a team and put a winning team on the field, what's the point of being an owner?
Right, and of course, as it's going to happen here, everything has gone crazy today on us. And Sirhan, we apologize. Now I got the TV in back of me, all messing up and everything else. I just want a picture. All I want's a picture in back of me. Can't even get that. So what do you think, Sirhan? Do you buy the fact that some of these, even the Reds, right? The Reds are in that boat. The Reds spent $100 million last year, taking it back to them for a second, kind of doing a full circle thing here. Not just Milwaukee, right? I won't pick on only Milwaukee, but the Reds spent roughly $100 million last year on their payroll, and they just gave Nick Martinez the qualifying offer of 21, right? That's a huge chunk of that's 20% of their payroll. Can they really afford to do that? Right, and so then we'll look at Milwaukee and say, well, can Milwaukee afford to do that too? Can they afford to give Willy Adames $20 million a year?
Not really. The same problems he talked about Milwaukee. We have the same thing here in Cincinnati. There's been a huge outcry for trying to spend the necessary cash flow to get the quality resources here, which is what the ownership here has been under extreme fire under from the ownership and the general manager Nick Kroll. I don't know whether it's willingness or not, but whatever it is, it creates a very, very, very bad perception. Now you're having a fan base that's basically just is starting to turn away from it, and because I could see when I went to opening day, the parade here in Cincinnati, it was packed. Like in 2 weeks' time, barely made a 5 to 10,000 fans game. I mean,
Right.
it's because of that perception, how everything is out there. You're gonna get a negative net result, and I don't know how you guys how they're gonna profit off of this if you're gonna just be the perceived cheap owner, as Mitch talked about with Milwaukee, because we're going through here in Cincinnati. It's gonna create a bad backlash, and the end result is not gonna be pretty.
All right. I certainly agree with all that. Guys, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. We usually do the opening drive, but I'm just going to give you the stats because, I researched the snot out of this stuff, and I want to pat myself on the back a little bit here, right? So, Sir Hunt, if you're not familiar, what we usually do is I give Mitch some opening statements, and he picks one, and then we talk about it for a few moments. We're not going to talk about any of them. In fact, I was going to try to start some music in the background, but every time it seems I start the music, we all fade to black. So let's not do that right at the moment. We'll do music less as we exit stage left here. Quarterbacks with 5 touchdown passes in a game. Joe Burrow has 2, and all the other quarterbacks in the league have 1. All of the rest of them have 1, right? With a loss to the Carolina Panthers, Derek Carr becomes the first quarterback in history. I can't stress this enough. In NFL history, the only one to lose to 31 different teams. Yay, Derek Carr. Third, in the last 3 seasons, Matt Olson has been the Braves' starting first baseman for 99.5% of their defensive outs. Meanwhile, in the same time span, the last 3 seasons, the Oakland A's have used 23 different first basemen. And you wonder why there's a difference in those 2 clubs, right? Last one. The Los Angeles Dodgers, I had to throw them in there. I don't like them. Anytime we can jab at them a little bit, we do it on this show, right? The Los Angeles Dodgers used 40 players? No. The Los Angeles Dodgers used 40 pitchers last season. So they're going to have to get themselves some pitching help. I don't think they can do it again if they have to use 40 pitchers in the season. Mitch Middlebrook, thank you very much for coming on board, buddy. We call him Moneybags. He does a lot of the gambling stuff for us. We love the stash, and we love everything else he stands for, buddy. Where can they find you on Twitter?
Yeah, you'll find me at Mitchellbrook52. Thanks for another good show and another great week. Sirhan, thanks for being here. It was a great time.
I really enjoyed it with you guys.
Thanks, sir. Well, we'll get to you, and I want you to plug all your stuff here. So you have a weekly show as well, right? Sirhan, tell me about that and plug that for us real fast, bud.
Basically, it's called Sirhan on X. Sometimes I do more than a week. Sometimes twice, maybe 3 times a week, given I have a commitment to a full-time job outside of the podcasting world. Basically, I go between 30 minutes and an hour to this variety of sports topics. Because I have a bunch of boxing followers, I like to discuss a historical perspective of boxing from then to now. It's basically I stream on a boatload of platforms. The dominant one, of course, is the X platform. That's why I called it Sirhan on X, because with all the changes that's gone on with that platform, it allowed me to do something I've always wanted to do, and now I've got a chance to actually do it.
Exactly. We're in the same boat. So we are here on X. You can get us at The643&OutGuys. And Mitch, I'm going to turn this one over to you because this was your deal. You did this for us, and I certainly appreciate it. We're on YouTube live now, too. Tell us where they can go to YouTube and get our stuff, bud.
Yeah, feel free to head over to YouTube. You can subscribe, watch the show live, watch afterwards. We definitely appreciate anything there. You'll find us at The643&OutPod there. And you can find all of our previous episodes as well. And leave us some comments, about what you think. And Sirhan, again, thanks for showing up and being on the show. We'll have to have you back sometime.
I would love to be back with you guys. This was just excellent stuff. I loved it and I enjoyed it.
All right, fantastic. We certainly appreciate both of you being on. From myself, the Cleat Geek Mike Valentine, that is Sirhan Day up there in the corner. Mitch Middlebrook is down at the bottom, holding everybody up, right? And we, two of us, are the 643 and Out Guys, and we love each and every one of you. Appreciate you guys sticking with us. And of course, as we say at the end of every broadcast, you know what's coming. The only thing that's fair in life is a baseball hit between the third and first base line. Good evening, everyone. Thank you all very much.